I recently reviewed a list of the world's most expensive real estate markets, and I'm going to tell you why the most expensive city to buy real estate in the world is actually a bargain compared to dozens of other cities on the list, including the one you may live in now. And I'm looking at a report from Numbeo.com where they rank some of the most affordable and most expensive places to live and buy property. We've told you about great value destinations that are even tax-friendly for years. But they list the top 10 most expensive real estate markets, starting at Sydney, Australia, with Shanghai in China. Number 8 is London. Number 7 is Tel Aviv. Number 6 is New York. Number 5 is Geneva. Number 4 is Seoul. Singapore is in 3rd place, Zurich is in 2nd place, and Hong Kong, even as prices have come down in many places, is still the most expensive real estate market in the world. $28,519 per square meter, or about $2,600 and change per square foot. And yet if I compare Hong Kong to other cities, not only in the top 10, but further down in the top 100, it's actually a bargain for the 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors that Nomad Capitalist works with. Now, I'm not telling you that you should move to Hong Kong. I'm going to come back to the greater point that you can take from this in a minute. But Hong Kong still has one of the most tax-friendly and one of the most immigration-friendly regimes in the world. And here's why that could help you. You can go out and get a residence permit in Hong Kong. You have to invest 30 million Hong Kong dollars. That's give or take about 4 million US in any number of different investments that include publicly traded shares. Some of those companies have gotten beaten up in recent years as China has fallen out of favor. And yet some of my investments from China have really come up in recent months. You earn high dividends tax-free. If $4 million isn't your entire net worth, it could be an interesting place to get a residence permit. And then when you live there as a tax resident, Hong Kong has a territorial tax regime, which means if you have investments, business interest, or other kinds of income in other places, those won't be taxed in Hong Kong. And so if you look at, I want to invest an equal amount of money in a home. I'm going to invest $4 million in having a nice apartment somewhere. Yeah, you're going to get a little bit smaller apartment in Hong Kong. You're going to get about 140 square meters, about 1,500 square feet in Hong Kong. Whereas if you went down to New York, yes, you're going to pay about 30% less. You're going to get more space for your money, apples to apples comparison. But if we extrapolate that out over time, Hong Kong has what New York doesn't, and that's the tax friendliness. In New York, you're going to pay US federal income tax, you're going to pay New York state tax, and you're going to pay New York City tax on top of all the other taxes and fees that the broke state of New York, the city of New York, which is now under more pressure, crime is through the roof, things are out of control. You're paying more than 50 cents on the dollar if you're a 7-figure earner to live in New York City. So project that out over time, you're pretty quickly wiping out those savings on the housing front. Now, you could argue that property in New York appreciates faster than property in Hong Kong. I don't necessarily look at property that I live in as something that I want to appreciate. And so sure, you might put out more money in Hong Kong to buy a property. That's more money that you wouldn't invest if you want the same size property. But let's compare it to Zurich as well. People are living in Switzerland, most of whom are Swiss citizens. They don't have the ability to take advantage of Switzerland's tax-friendly lump sum tax program, and they're basically paying the same for housing. I've got a friend who's selling a home right now in a smaller town in Switzerland. The prices are absolutely insane. He could retire, and retire nicely, on just selling a 4-story home in a town along the lake. And so him living in Switzerland, he's going to pay a lot of tax at his job, which he could work remotely. He's going to pay tax if he ever leaves and starts a business. And so he's basically paying as much as in Hong Kong. Now, let me be clear. I'm not telling you that you should move to Hong Kong, but what I want you to understand is this larger principle. You may be living in a place where real estate's expensive, where the cost of living is expensive, and yet you're paying all of that on top of your even bigger cost in your life if you're a successful person, which is you're paying taxes. And what you're seeing in these big cities is the politicians are against you. They want to tax you more and more. You're the scapegoat for all their problems. And they need a scapegoat because crime is out of control in some of these places. Look at New York, look at San Francisco, look at London. People can't wear their nice watches around in London. I take no pleasure in saying that. I grew up watching James Bond movies and reading books about London, reading even back to, Around the World in 80 Days, leaving the Reform Club in London. Oh, that sounds so nice. I wish these places were better, but we have to live in reality. And so here's the takeaway. You could move to a place where property costs more. Let's say you live in a smaller city in a place like the US. Let's say you live in Austin and prices have gone through the roof there, or Miami, prices have gone through the roof. Nashville, they've gone through the roof. Even if you live in a place like San Antonio or somewhere more affordable, sure, you could move overseas to an equal quality or better city and the property may be more expensive. But if you're paying 40 or 50 cents on the dollar in taxes, and in some of these places you're not even getting your money's worth because they're letting criminals run amok and the politicians are wagging their finger in your face and your kids are going to school and learning stuff you don't want them to learn, that's not a good environment. Now, once you realize, hey, I could move to Hong Kong, I could get a residence permit, I could dramatically and legally reduce my tax bill, and yeah, I'll pay a little bit more for housing. I could always rent, by the way, to see if I like it for a while before I commit. And I could put that capital that I sell my house where I live now to work for me into my business or into investments and generate money on that. But once you realize you could go there, well, where else could you go? About 1/10 the price of Hong Kong for housing is Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. That's where we host our annual event, Nomad Capitalist Live. We get together for 4 days every year. The absolute best information for 4 days. People's heads are spinning. Absolute best networking. 750, 800 people from all around the world who are going to share their stories of what they're doing. And great entertainment. Best entertainment for Nomad Capitalists anywhere. Go to nomadcapitalist.com/live. Get on the waiting list for that. It's sold out in 14 days this year. We'd love to have you there next year, but you gotta be on the waiting list. And one reason why we host Nomad Capitalist Live in Kuala Lumpur is it's been a place I've spent time for over a decade, but even compared to San Antonio, Vilnius, Lithuania, Warsaw, Poland, Manchester, United Kingdom, Ottawa, Canada, Rotterdam, Netherlands, Bremen, Germany, Gdansk, Poland, Tallinn, Estonia, Leipzig, Germany, Antwerp, Charlotte, Dallas, Denver, Wrocław, Poland, Yerevan, Armenia. It is more affordable. Kaunas, Lithuania. If you're living in Kaunas, you probably want to get out no matter the price. But it is more affordable than all these places. Calgary, Istanbul, Poznan, Poland, Orlando, Minneapolis, and New Orleans is the one that's just more expensive than Kuala Lumpur. Kuala Lumpur and Las Vegas are about right on track, and I think if you are willing to buy a larger home, if you're coming from a place like the United States and you want a larger home, larger homes are a bit out of vogue in some parts of Kuala Lumpur. You could get probably half that price. So half the price to live in Las Vegas, where housing is plentiful. I mean, you're on par with Houston and places like that. So what if you sold your property in a place where, even if you live in Texas, where there's no state tax and there's no city tax, you're still paying US federal tax. Same if you live in Manchester or if you live in Poznan, Poland, you're paying tax at the national level. And you're paying at least 35, 40, 45 cents on every dollar, euro, pound, shekel, what have you, that you are earning. So you can lower your cost of housing, you can lower your cost of living, but even if you didn't, even if you went to Hong Kong, where you don't have to spend that much to live, but the housing is crazy, it wouldn't take you that long to get back to even. Let's say you make $1 million a year and you're paying $400,000 in taxes. The difference in going from $1 million house to a $2 million house in a tax-friendly place where you get to keep most of that $400,000 in tax, you're going to make that back in 2.5 years. And it's not like your real estate investment just went up in smoke. Obviously, one thing we talk to people about is generally buying secondhand properties. Could be a year old, could be 101 years old, or anywhere in between. We generally tell people not to buy from developers because most developer deals around the world, when you're the foreign buyer, they're going to be overpriced. They've got all kinds of gimmicks, but if you avoid those, you can buy properties, and nobody guarantees whether the market will go up and down, but you've got a decent chance over time to make some money in that property the way you might at home, or at least, break even. You're not going to lose money. So even if you have a more expensive home, and that home maintains its value, and that home keeps pace with inflation, you've taken some more money at the table. All we're talking about is opportunity cost at that point. And so the idea for certain people who are afraid to move overseas because They don't want to go down. You come to Nomad Capitalist Live and you come to Kuala Lumpur, you will see this isn't really stepping down. If you live in a nice neighborhood, you go to the nice restaurants, some people hire staff to live in their home. That's something you can do with the savings, so your lifestyle gets better. People hire nannies, they hire maids, they hire butlers. You can do that with the tax savings because you're saving so much besides just the taxes. You're saving the cost of living. But if you aren't convinced and you want to go to a place that is considered to be on the level, you could move from London to Switzerland. Now, not to Zurich, but other parts of Switzerland have Switzerland's lump sum tax program. You're going to pay one lump sum. If you're European, could be as little as 100,000 and change a year, and you can make all the money that you want around the world. So if you make $10 million a year, your tax rate could be a couple of percentage points. And so Geneva is going to cost you $20,000, $19,989 per meter. That is about 10, 11, 12% more expensive than London. You're going to make that back almost immediately. And so I happen to think that you can find in kind of the mid-level places, Kuala Lumpur, for example, or a place in Eastern Europe, or a place in South or Central America. There's plenty of places. Mexico is a place a lot of people like to go. Sure, Mexico isn't as economically developed as the US or the UK. They also don't have some of the BS rules and regulations that the US and UK has, so you're getting that also. But sure, a Mexico or a Malaysia may not be quite at that level. You can find that level in certain pockets. You can have the same level in your life. But if you don't want to do that, then maybe you take the hit on spending a little bit more on housing because you're going to save that tax rate of 40, 45%. It could go down to 0, to 2, to 5. And even if you're an American, yes, capital gains, those are harder to deal with. You've got places like Puerto Rico for that. You've also got having a second passport and one day not being American as a solution for that. But if you're an American business owner, you can still dramatically reduce your tax rate. Let's say you get it down to 9, 10, 11%. You're still probably, cutting your tax bill by 3/4. And, you see Las Vegas and Kuala Lumpur right on par. And again, I argue Kuala Lumpur is actually substantially cheaper if you're willing to buy a large house and do some renovations. And so you're looking at a couple of factors. What's the quality of life that I perceive in a certain place? What's the actual quality of life that I can have? And what are my actual tax and cost of living costs divided by any extra in housing? And you decide how you want to play those all together. We help our clients figure this stuff out. We have dozens and dozens of options. We've got a back-end system we created from scratch called Minerva. All of our data, all our research goes in there. We have programs in every corner of the world. How to get a residence permit, how to get a citizenship, how different tax programs work, how different companies work within those tax programs, other things like bank accounts and trusts, because you may not want those in the place that you actually live. We provide the holistic solutions that other people talk about, and then they shoehorn you into the 2 or 3 options that they prefer to sell, that they're comfortable with. We've helped thousands of clients at this point go to dozens and dozens and dozens of countries, and again, they're diversifying. One thing goes here, one thing goes here, it all works together smoothly. Learn how to do that at nomadcapitalist.com/apply. If you are a 7 or 8 figure entrepreneur or investor and you live in a Western country, or you live in a high-tax non-Western country, you are losing a lot of money to tax. What if you put that money into housing somewhere? Housing that is going to retain its value or grow. That's a lot better investment for you and your family, especially if that leads to future citizenship for your family, that gives them even more options, gives you a plan B in times of chaos. That's a lot better plan than throwing your money down the rat's hole or into the sewer, the world's longest urinal that is the New York subway system, where they spit on you for giving them your money. You're still paying some of the highest costs for real estate in New York and London, where people come out from nice restaurants and are threatened with a stabbing if they don't hand over their Rolex. And so I'll end with a few more examples. You can move from Sydney, Australia to Penang, Malaysia. We don't have the numbers for Penang for housing. Let's say it's the same as Kuala Lumpur. It's probably a little bit lower. You're going to cut your housing costs by 80%, probably cut your taxes by 80% or more, get a lifestyle improvement, and add the full-time maid, add the full-time nanny. You're not going to have that in Australia. People would like, what are you weird? Do you have a nanny? Or you have a maid? What? Boston to Dublin, cut your housing by 30%. I'm not so sure about that. Let's just call it even. Cut your taxes from 50% down to 10%, perhaps, if you're an American. From Los Angeles to Chile or Uruguay or Panama, all similar prices. Cut your housing costs by about 2/3, get a multi-year tax exemption, cut your taxes by that much or more. Or make this an opportunity if you're tired of the politicians letting chaos run amok. Move to more conservative place. We've talked about Poland. Wrocław in southern Poland is 1/3 cheaper than San Antonio, Texas. You've got a new lump sum tax regime in Poland. It's a more conservative place. So you don't always have to move to the big city. You can move to a Wrocław or a Poznan or a Łódź in a place like Poland. You can move to Belgrade in Serbia. There's so many options out there. And once you realize, hey, I have options, I'm paying too much for housing, I'm paying too much in taxes, I'm not getting enough for it, that's when the wheels start moving. And that's why I think Nomad Capitalist is the best company to help people with this, because we have all the options and we let you choose as the facts come out.